Hey YouTubers, welcome to the Cyber Overwatch channel. I am Pragmatic One. In this video, I will be doing a walkthrough of TryHackMe's Daily Bugle vulnerable host. This room's difficulty is rated hard on the platform and is themed around the Daily Bugle newspaper from the Spider-Man universe. Don't let the fun theme fool you though. This vulnerable host covers some serious real-world attack techniques that you'll encounter in professional engagements. Let's get into it. In this walkthrough, I'll cover the complete attack lifecycle: reconnaissance, enumeration, exploitation, and post-exploitation. Specifically, I'll perform port scanning, Joomla CMS enumeration, SQL injection exploitation using Joomla, credential cracking with Hashcat, reverse shell deployment through a Joomla template, lateral movement via exposed configuration files, and privilege escalation through a sudo misconfiguration on the Yum package manager. If you find this content informative and you are interested in cybersecurity, please like and subscribe to the Cyber Overwatch channel. Also, for more free content, please regularly check back on www.cyberoverwatch.com. Daily Bugle is a vulnerable host created by TryHackMe. It simulates a publicly exposed web server running a misconfigured and outdated Joomla CMS installation with several privilege escalation opportunities waiting for an attacker who can navigate the attack chain. Let's break down the attack surface using the MITRE attack framework. T1595.002 active scanning, vulnerability scanning. Nmap is used to map the target open ports and enumerate service versions to identify initial attack surface. T1190 exploit public-facing application. A vulnerable Joomla version 3.7.0 installation is exploited using a well-documented SQL injection vulnerability, CVE 2017-8917, to extract administrator credentials from the backend database without authentication. T1110.002 brute force password cracking. The bcrypt password hash extracted via SQL injection is cracked offline using Hashcat with Iraku.txt word list. T1059.004 command inscripting interpreter Unix shell. A PHP reverse shell is injected into a Joomla template file through the administrator panel to achieve remote code execution on the underlying server. T1552.001 unsecured credentials and files. Plaintext database credentials stored in the Joomla configuration file are reused to pivot to a higher privileged local system account. T1548.003 abuse elevation control mechanism, sudo and sudo caching. A sudo rule permitting the low privileged user to run the Yum package manager as root is abused to install a malicious RPM package and spawn a root shell. Daily Bugle vulnerable host is deployed and its IP address is visible on the TryHackMe dashboard. As with every engagement, reconnaissance is the foundation. The goal is to understand what is running on the machine before I decide how to attack it. I'll kick things off by using Nmap to run a full port scan using the command shown in the CLI. I've broken down these flags in detail in previous videos, so I'll keep it moving. For a deeper understanding of each option, check out my Nmap video series that goes in depth on Nmap's capabilities. The scan completed and I've got 3 open ports to work with. Port 22, SSH, this indicates SSH is up and running. Port 80, based on the service banner, this indicates that an Apache web server is running Apache 2.4.6, is notably old, and is commonly found on Red Hat Linux and CentOS deployments. This may be my primary target. Port 3306, MySQL. Based on the service banner, this indicates that MySQL is running on its default port. This is a significant finding. A database service exposed on a server running a CMS almost certainly backs that CMS, and depending on the configuration, it may be accessible. I'll revisit this in a little bit. The OS detection and service banners indicate the target host is running CentOS, which is important because package management and privilege escalation techniques differ between Debian-based and Red Hat Linux-based distributions. I'll keep that in mind when I reach post-exploitation. Navigating to port 80 in the browser loads a web page styled as the Daily Bugle newspaper, complete with a headline about Spider-Man robbing a bank. Underneath the theme is a Joomla CMS installation, which is visible from metadata in the page source. A majority of the time when performing web application enumeration, I will usually browse to the robots.txt. Based on the contents of the robots.txt, I can confirm that the target host most likely has Joomla running on it. Also, another good find is there are several pages listed that may have weaknesses. I will enumerate them in a bit. Looking at the contents of the robots.txt, I saw that the administrator page was listed. Before further enumerating the pages listed, I wanted to enumerate the Joomla installation more thoroughly. Checking the standard Joomla path for version information 100% confirmed that this target host is running Joomla. The XML file returned the Joomla version 3.6. This is a critical piece of information. Joomla 3.6 is associated with a well-known and severe SQL injection vulnerability that I can exploit to extract database content without authentication. Joomla is a free open-source content management system used to build and manage websites and online applications. Here's a breakdown of what makes it relevant in this context. Core functionality. Like WordPress, Joomla provides a web-based interface for managing site content, user accounts, extensions, and templates. It uses a PHP backend and a MySQL database to store all site data, including user credentials. Market position. Joomla is one of the most widely deployed CMS platforms on the internet, powering millions of sites ranging from small personal blogs to large enterprise portals. Its popularity makes it a frequent target in real-world attacks. Administrator panel. Joomla's administrator panel, typically located at /administrator, is the management interface where site admins can modify templates, install extensions, and manage users. From a penetration testing perspective, getting admin access to this panel is a major milestone because the template editor provides a mechanism to execute arbitrary PHP code on the server. CVE-2017-8917. Joomla version 3.7.0 specifically introduced a new component called com_fields that contained a SQL injection vulnerability in the way it handles user-supplied input in the list full ordering parameter. Because this endpoint does not require authentication, an unauthenticated attacker can exploit it to extract data directly from the backend MySQL database, including administrator username and password hashes. Before going straight to exploitation, I want to run a dedicated Joomla scanner to be thorough and verify the version, also to identify any additional vulnerabilities or exposed paths. I'll use JoomScan, a purpose-built Joomla enumeration tool with the -EC flag, which tells JoomScan to enumerate all components as well. JoomScan notes that the Joomla version is 3.7.0. It also identified the administrator panel location at /administrator and a number of configuration paths. With version confirmation, let me see if there are any published exploit POCs available. With the Joomla version in hand, I googled for an exploit as shown in the browser. The results displayed CVE-2017-8917. It also listed SQL injection and the version of Joomla on the target host. I reviewed the Invicti page discussing the Joomla 3.7.0 SQL injection vulnerability. The page provided a lot of good references to research. After doing my research, rather than manually crafting SQL injection payloads, I'll use Joomla, a purpose-built Python exploit script specifically targeting CVE-2017-8917 in Joomla version 3.7.0. I'll clone the Joomla script from the Terran Peterson GitHub repository. I'll run the following git clone command to download the Joomla script. After executing the git clone command, I can see the Joomla script downloaded successfully. With the tool downloaded, I'll just change the directory to the Joomla folder and execute the script against the target host URL as shown in the CLI. The exploit runs successfully and extracts data from the Joomla database. The output returns a user record from the database containing a username and password hash. The username is Jonah and the associated hash is a bcrypt hash, identifiable by its $2y$ prefix. Bcrypt is a strong adaptive hashing algorithm, which means cracking it will take more computational effort than similar hashes like MD5 or SHA-1, but it's absolutely possible with the right tooling in WordList. SQL injection is one of the most well-documented and impactful web application vulnerabilities in existence, consistently appearing in the OWASP Top 10. Here's what it means in practice. How it works. Web applications that incorporate user-supplied input into database queries without properly sanitizing or parameterizing the input are vulnerable. An attacker can manipulate the query structure by injecting SQL syntax, causing the database to return data it was never intended to expose, bypass authentication logic, or in some cases execute commands on underlying operating systems. CVE-2017-8917 specifically. The vulnerable com_fields component in Joomla version 3.7.0 passed user input from the list full ordering get parameter directly into the database query. By supplying crafted SQL syntax in the parameter, an attacker can perform a union-based injection to extract arbitrary data from the MySQL database, including the hash__users table, which stores administrator credentials. Why this matters. SQL injection vulnerabilities in publicly facing CMS installations represent a critical risk because they require no authentication and can directly expose the credentials needed to fully compromise the application. This is exactly the scenario I'm exploiting here. With bcrypt hash in hand, the next step is offline password cracking. I'll use Hashcat, the industry standard GPU accelerated password cracking tool, combined with the RockUtext word list, a commonly used word list derived from real-world data breach containing over 14 million passwords. First, I'll save the hash to a file called hash.txt for hashcat to process. With my hash saved, now I'll run hashcat. I'll run the following hashcat command shown in the CLI. Bcrypt is a hashcat mode 3200. I'll point it to our hash file in the Rocky word list. Hashcat works through the word list and eventually cracks the hash. The plaintext password is returned in the output appended after the hash, separated by a colon. Bcrypt is slow to crack by design, so depending on your hardware, this may take several minutes. If you're running a VM without GPU pass-through, be patient. With a valid username and cracked password, I navigated to the Joomla administrator login page. I'll authenticate using the Jonah account and the cracked password. Login is successful, and I now have full administrative access to the Joomla backend. With admin access to Joomla, the path to remote code execution follows the same principle as WordPress. The template editor allows direct modification of PHP files that are served by the web server. I navigated to the templates page by clicking configuration, templates, then templates again. To speed things up, I've already downloaded my PHP reverse shell from Pentest Monkey's GitHub repo and made the necessary changes to the script. In Joomla, I've selected an active template, in this case ProStar details and files, because it is listed as default for all pages, and opened the template file editor. I selected the index.php file as my injection point. I replaced the contents of index.php with my Pentest Monkey PHP reverse shell. After saving the modified template file, I set up a netcat listener on my system to catch the shell. To trigger the index.php template file, I navigated to the main page of the target site, which will cause Joomla to invoke the index template. Switching back to my netcat listener, it appears that it caught an incoming connection. I now have a shell on the target host. I ran the whoami command, and I can see I'm running as Apache, the web server service account used by CentOS systems, equivalent to www-data on Debian-based systems. Now I need to stabilize the shell. I'll run the following Python command shown in the CLI. With a stable shell, my first priority is finding sensitive data and identifying privilege escalation paths. One of the most reliably productive places to look on a CMS server is the application's configuration file, which almost always contains database credentials in plain text. By default, Joomla stores configuration.php file in the web root. I'll run the following cat command to read the configuration file from the target host's web root. The configuration file is readable and contains the database connection settings in plain text, including a database password for the username root. This is a critical finding. System administrators frequently reuse passwords between database accounts and local system accounts, a misconfiguration that allows attackers to pivot from web application access to operating system access. I have what looks to be a password. Let me do some host enumeration and see what other user accounts exist on this system. I'll run the following cat command shown in the CLI. Based on the output, there seems to be two user accounts, the root account and the J. Jameson account, and I can see the first name of the J. Jameson account is Jonah, just like the Joomla account. It's always worth a try to attempt to log in to a system user account with credentials you find on the target host. I ran the su or switch user command shown in the CLI, and I get prompted for a password. Let me try the password I found in the Joomla configuration file. The password is accepted, and I've successfully pivoted to the J. Jameson user account. This is lateral movement driven entirely by password reuse, one of the most common findings in real-world penetration tests. Now that I am the J. Jameson user, I need to do more host enumeration. I ran the ls-la command shown in the CLI to determine where I am. It looks like I am in the root folder. I'll run the following commands shown in the CLI to change directory to the J. Jameson home directory and to view the contents. I'll run the following cat command to view the contents of the file. The user flag is captured. Now I need to go after root. One thing I want to check is if there are any commands for the J. Jameson user I can run with elevated privileges. I'll run the sudo-l command shown in the CLI. The output reveals the J. Jameson user can run /user/bin/yum as root without a password. This is a significant misconfiguration. Yum is a package manager for Red Hat-based Linux distributions, including CentOS, and it supports custom plugins, which I can exploit to execute arbitrary code as root. Yum is a default package manager on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, and Fedora systems. It handles installing, updating, and removing software packages. Here's why sudo access to Yum is dangerous. Plugin system. Yum supports a plugin architecture that allows custom code to be loaded and executed during package manager operations. Plugins are written in Python and loaded automatically when Yum runs. The exploit. By crafting a malicious custom RPM package or Yum plugin that executes arbitrary shell commands, an attacker with sudo yum access can instruct Yum to run that code as root. The technique, documented in GTFO bins, a public reference for Unix binary privilege escalation, demonstrates exactly how to create a minimal malicious plugin that spawns an interactive root shell when Yum is invoked. Why this misconfiguration exists. System administrators sometimes grant Yum sudo access to allow application accounts or junior administrators to install packages without full root access. However, because Yum can load and execute arbitrary plugin code, this effectively grants full root access and represents a critical privilege escalation path. Now that I know that a J. Jameson user has root privileges to the Yum package manager, I need to figure out a way to escalate my privileges. One resource I like to use is GTFO bins. Lucky for me, GTFO bins appears to have a method to escalate my privileges with Yum. Now that I have a method to try, I changed directories to the /temp folder as shown in the CLI. I executed the GTFO bins technique for Yum privilege escalation as shown in the CLI. This involves creating a minimal Yum plugin structure that spawns a shell when the plugin is loaded. I'll set up the required directory structure and files. I created the plugin configuration file by running the following commands shown in the CLI. Next, I created the actual malicious Python plugin file that spawns the shell. With all the plugin components in place, I invoked Yum with sudo, pointing it to my malicious configuration file. Based on the output, it appears that I have a root shell. To verify the root shell, I ran the whoami command shown in the CLI. Privilege escalation has been confirmed. I changed the following command shown in the CLI to change directory to the root home folder and to view the contents. Looking at the output, I can see the final flag root.txt. I ran the cat command shown in the CLI to view the contents of the root.txt file. With that, the root flag has been captured. Full system compromise achieved. Thank you for watching this walkthrough of TryHackMe's Daily Bugle. I successfully executed the full attack lifecycle, starting with an nmap scan that identified an Apache web server and a MySQL database service, enumerating a Joomla 3.7.0 installation and confirming it was vulnerable to CVE-2017-8917, exploiting that SQL injection vulnerability with Joomla to extract an administrator password hash, cracking that decrypt hash offline with hashcat and the rocku text file, using those credentials to access the Joomla admin panel and deploy a PHP reverse shell through the template editor, pivoting from the Apache service account to the J. Jameson system user by finding plaintext database credentials in the Joomla configuration file, and finally escalating to root by abusing the sudo misconfiguration that permitted the Yum package manager to run with elevated privileges. What makes this vulnerable host particularly valuable as a learning exercise is the breadth of techniques involved. I touched on SQL injection, offline hash cracking, CMS exploitation, credential reuse, and package manager abuse, all in a single engagement. This kind of chained attack path mirrors what real-world attackers would walk through when targeting a poorly maintained web server. Thank you for also checking out the Cyber Overwatch channel. If you find this content informative and you are interested in cybersecurity, please like and subscribe to the Cyber Overwatch channel. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments or reach out through the Cyber Overwatch website linked in the description. Until next time, keep learning. The only way to improve is to keep learning. Pragmatic1, signing off.